part of human history from the beginning. Some people might say that's horrible. She abandoned that baby. She preserved that baby's life. That took a lot. And if you don't think that adoption costs you something, it costs a lot. There's a lot of emotion that goes into placing a baby for adoption. Carrying a child for 9 months, and then in some people's mind just walking away. No, they're not walking away. They are specifically creating a home for their baby. They are handing this child over. They are entrusting their child to a set of parents. There's a lot of pain, a lot of grief that goes into that decision. But here's the other thing. No matter what decision they make, they're all going to come with grief. It's all going to come with sacrifice, and it's all going to have pain. Whether you choose to parent full-time, there's sacrifice, grief, pain, etc. Whether you choose to abort, and we know, and I don't even have to give you any more statistical information and data on that, you've heard it, sacrifice, pain, and grief that is very debilitating to women post-abortive. And adoption. If she chooses to provide parents by placing her child for adoption, there's going to be grief and pain associated with that decision. But it ends in life. And it ends in a manner that she can know she's done something amazing for this child. Here's some resources. Everybody get your pen. I want you to write these resources down before we continue on with our conversation, because you need to have this information. One of the resources that I want you to read, you can get online and get it. This Good Mother, Birth Mother is National Council for Adoption. That's NCFA. You can go to NCFA's website. I think it's infantadopt.org. You can Google NCFA, National Council for Adoption, and order this online. I think it's like $3. It's nothing. No big financial investment. Birth Mother, Good Mother is a fantastic research project that collects not raw data, statistical numbers. Its main heart is collecting the attitudes and the decision-making that goes into placing a child for adoption. This chronicles the whole thought process, understanding the birth mother and the process that she goes through. This will tell you what it is. This will tell you what she's thinking and why she chose adoption as her choice for her child. It is easy to read. It is prose-oriented. It is not dry statistical number driven. It's wonderful. It'll have bolded comments and then have explanation of why women chose the way they did. I love the name, Birth Mother, Good Mother. These women felt good about their decision. They felt, after considering all of their options, this was the best decision for them and the best decision for their baby. Another resource is called, oh, by the way, NCFA, this is the one by Charles Kenny, Dr. Charles Kenny. This one is called The Missing Piece, Adoption Counseling and Pregnancy Resource Centers. This is for those of you who may want to serve in some capacity in a community ministry or organization that reaches out specifically to women who are experiencing unplanned pregnancies, okay? It is by the Family Research Council. This is Kurt Young. It is tremendous. When I started Active Life, like I said in the bio that was read earlier, I made an assumption. My whole life, I assumed people understood adoption. They understood and kind of accepted that it was just one of the ways that American families are created. I also made the assumption that counselors in pregnancy clinics and organizations understood it, embraced it, and offered it. And that was wrong. These are the statistics that I discovered. 60% of pregnancy center counselors offered adoption. 40% did not. Do you think that had an impact on her ability to make a fully informed choice? Absolutely. Because it went from parenting choices to this. This is almost attitude driven. This is parenting options driven. Do you see what I'm saying? So often, I think in the pro-life movement, and I'm not going to judge because everybody has a role and everybody has a part to play, and who am I to stand in judgment of anyone? I don't. But I feel in the last several years, we have missed opportunities to educate people because we've taken this approach right here. Well, you can't kill your baby. What in the world are you thinking? That's terrible. That's awful. Don't you realize that is a baby? Well, yes, we realize that's a baby. Let's think about, instead of focusing on that, focusing on parenting options. Using the language of the people that we may not hold the same ideas with. Because it's all about making a woman's fully informed decision. I say, hot dog, I want you to make a fully informed decision, so I want to tell you about adoption. Because adoption is the one option that both sides can agree upon. If you're truly interested in a fully informed decision. The interesting thing is, in certain circles, not in all, certain circles, that will ferret out the real attitude. Do you see what I mean? It will ferret out whether you're really for a fully informed decision or if you're really pro-abortion. There's a difference. And sometimes people on the opposite side have not thought about adoption and how it fits into the conversation. They just haven't thought of it. Just like the girls and guys who are experiencing these pregnancies don't think about it. Because we've not focused on it. The big overall generalization in America, we've not focused on it. We've not invited adoption to the table. We've left it in the corner. Once she decides to choose life, then we'll tell her about adoption. You know what that's going to do? I'm so glad that you have chosen life. You have done so well. What's your name? Ellie? Allie. So good. So glad that you chose life. Now that you've chosen life, now I want you to consider adoption. If you save that for further on into the pregnancy, some women will think, okay, great, you have coerced me into falling in love with this baby, now you're going to rip it out of my hands. That's not what we're doing. And if we are faithful to bring it up at the beginning as a parenting choice, even if they say, no, I'm not interested in discussing it, it's okay. At least you planted the seed, and at least you've been intentional about raising it as an option, right? That's what you need to do. This tells you about the people who weren't offering adoption. 60% did offer it, 40% did not. Out of the 60% of the pregnancy counselors that did offer it, out of that 60%, 40% of them gave inaccurate information. Do you think that had an impact on her decision? If you don't know the answer to something, don't be afraid to say, you know what, I really don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out. Can I get back to you on that? That'd be a whole lot better than spouting off something that may not be right. You owe it to the person that you're talking with to give them the truth. Make sure that you know what you're talking about. That's really, really important because you are so influential. You carry the ability to influence people's minds, their hearts, and not only affect her, but affect the baby. we grow up, we don't stay babies. We grow up and we become 40-year-old women who have 2 kids and married 20 years. Because of my birth mother's decision 40 plus years ago to choose life for me and place me for adoption, it allows Connor and Catherine to be here. That's the reality of adoption. This is not a hypothetical conversation we're having. This is not philosophy. This is reality. There are people at the end of the process. I happen to be one of those people, but there's 2 more people here because of that decision. Adoption affects generations for life. It's amazing. So, in that pie of pregnancy counselors, I want you to be in that slice of 20% who know exactly what they're talking about. And they offer it each and every time. And I want that 20% to grow. I want you to make that 20% grow and to make sure that every time that you come in contact with somebody who might be grappling with this decision, you offer them that option. You don't have to know all the ins and outs and all the law and all that. You don't have to be the professional. Your part might just be to plant the seed of the thought. And then maybe you help connect her with an organization that can take the next step. But I assure you, if you don't offer it, chances are she's not going to think about it on her own. He's not going to think about it on her own. His own. Okay, next part is one that's called abortion. The least of 3 evils. You have to know the mindset of the woman who is abortion vulnerable and why they would choose abortion. I know you've heard a whole lot of talk about abortion probably this week. I'm not going to spend any more time on it than to let you know this is also a very important research study done by Kenny and Associates, again, same guy that wrote the other one, Birth Mother, Good Mother, talks about the woman who chooses abortion and why she thinks that would be the most humane decision. Because if you can't try to walk through and see things through her lens and help her and try to walk that road with her, she's probably not going to listen because she's going to feel like you're trying to tell her what to do. Doesn't mean you agree with it. It just means you're willing to try to see from her perspective. Because don't you want her to try to see your perspective? Then be the first one to let her talk. Be the first one to ask her the questions. Why do you think that would be your best choice? That's not a good choice. Or why would you want to do that? But help me understand how that would be your best choice. And then let her talk. The last one I want to share with you is very, very important. It is a little one called So I Was Thinking About Adoption. This is put out by a group called Lifetime Adoption out of California. Tremendous resource for expectant moms who are considering placing their child for adoption. Great information, has empty pages in here for her to journal her thoughts, jot down some questions, has all kinds of information all the way throughout. They also have a new app for iPhones as well as Droids. It's now out. So they're really on the cutting edge as educators trying to reach women right where they are. This is a very, very powerful little resource. I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, now then, we've talked a little bit about language. We've talked a little bit about some resources. But as far as this conversation goes, you have to know that adoption has changed dramatically. And there's 3 main choices in adoption these days. Very, very simple. You have to realize that a woman and a man today can create an adoption plan that is tailor-made for them. They make every decision. Nobody else, but they make the decisions. The first one I want to tell you about is called confidential. It's exactly that. It's confidential. It means that the anonymity of all parties is protected. You as the birth mother are protected. You do not share your information directly with anyone other than the agency with which you are working. But you're over here, and you're the one that receives this precious gift of life. You don't know the name of the birth mother. You don't know where she lives. You have no contact whatsoever. None. You're anonymous and protected. You're anonymous and protected. Confidential. The next one is one called semi-open. It is one where you have worked with an agency. You've read letters and looked at pictures and tried to get to know through paper and pictures the family that you feel most comfortable with. You've chosen, what's your name? Katie. Oh, Katie, I can remember that name. My daughter is Katie. So you've chosen Katie, and maybe you've even met her. But you don't know Katie's last name. You don't know where she lives. You don't have her number, her address, an email, nothing. And vice versa, you don't have any of that information on her. But you can still receive information about the baby because you can write to her and you can mail her letters and all of that. But how is that going to happen? Because I just said you don't have the information. Through the agency. The intermediary is the agency. You read the letters, get the pictures from Walgreens, put them in the package, and you mail them to me. And I am XYZ Adoption Agency. I turn and forward them to you so that you see the fruit of your choice. And you see how the child is doing, how the child is thriving, and that is really great. Maybe that's the kind of adoption that you want to put in place. The last and the third choice is completely open. And all information, all identifying information is shared. You've chosen Katie as the mother, and you know her last name, you know where she lives, you have visited her house maybe. Some women and men are so comfortable that they would invite Katie into the birth room as the child is born. It just depends on what she feels comfortable with. She sets the tone and creates the plan, not Katie. She does it. That's huge. When I was placed for adoption, Allison had no choice. She went and lived in a maternity home and was separated from her family for several months. She made the decision to place me for adoption. She never saw who my parents were going to be, didn't know anything about them, where I was going, who I was going with, didn't know anything. But it's amazing, the control, the power, and just the degree of being in control. You get to create the plan you are comfortable with. All three options still exist today, certainly in Texas. Here's an important thing to remember. Adoption is regulated at the state level, not at the federal level. What's right in Texas is not necessarily the same. I can tell you it's not the same in, say, California or New York. It's different. It's totally different. Why is all of this important? I mean, how is this information going to help you? Just these three options, how's it going to help you?
It makes the woman feel more comfortable because she still wants a degree of control and, well, not control, but to know what her baby's life is going to be like, so she doesn't feel like she's abandoned yet. She can have that.
Okay, so how is it going to benefit you? Yes.
It keeps us, our options open to explain to the woman, this seems like you have these three options and that adoption is this one way, but you need to look, there's inside adoption, there's even more options, which opens your doors even further.
Huge. That's what you just said is so important to be able to get out. So jump back to the very beginning when I said provide parents. When someone says that they're pregnant and you're talking about options and you ask, have you ever thought about providing parents for your child? Most of likely, they're going to look at you and say, what? What are you talking about? Well, oh, okay, so I'm gonna be the pregnant one and you're gonna tell me. So somebody just volunteer. No, I haven't thought about, what are you talking about? What is providing parents? Somebody explain that to me. See, this is the interactive part.
Well, you have 3 options. You could be able to choose your parents and for choosing parents or at this point you would just explain the 3 options of adoption
Yes.
without saying adoption.
Right, well, and you can say, did you realize that you can do that? Did you even realize that you have that option? Yes.
Can you say provide parents through adoption?
Yes,
Okay.
but I would say, don't say adoption first.
Okay.
And do you know why? Because she's gonna ask you what world you're talking about. And then that offers you the opportunity to fill it in. If she asks the question, then you can offer the information.
It's like a positive loaded phrase.
Yes, it's positive and it is, you're also asking for permission. You know, you're not just saying, well, why didn't you think about adoption? Let me tell you all about it. You're asking. This is a very private thing. And you're also trying to establish trust. Have you ever thought about, and plus just creating curiosity about the topic. You need to create curiosity about adoption. Now, if I say, you are out of your mind, are you talking about adoption? You are out of your mind, lady. There is no way I could ever give up my baby for adoption. You're nuts.
So you can say it's not giving up your baby. And
Well, yeah, it is. I'm not going to parent the baby, am I?
no, it's choosing another set of parents to do.
That I'm just giving my baby to.
Yeah.
No! You're doing great. I'm picking on you. You're doing great. Do you see what I mean, though? Now you're on this hot seat. Keep me engaged. What have you already learned recently that could keep me in the conversation? There's no way I'm going to give up that baby. Yes, ma'am.
You wouldn't be giving up your baby, you would be creating a good home for your baby.
Okay, you're creating a good home. What else?
Well, what do you think is so bad about giving up your baby? Like, why?
Because I'll never know what happened to my baby. There's my fear. I just told you. I'll never know what happened to my baby, so forget it. I can never give it up.
Have you considered open?
What is that? Open.
Open adoption is where you can talk to the other prospective parents and you're fully like involved in the decision and you know where they live and they know where you are and how to contact you and you're a part of the family, you're a part of that process.
Wow. No, I don't want to do it. I mean, okay, and that's my right to say no, I don't want to do it. You did a great job, by the way. Okay, so, but what have they just done for me?
They've opened up your eyes and see what they let you know about your options.
You had educated me. You let me know something. Do you think she knew all that?
No.
And that took what, like 27 seconds? I mean, that wasn't like really hard. Yes.
It's not really about always, you don't have to change someone's mind right on the spot. It's just planting that seed and letting them go home and think about it and process the information because that's a huge decision. You can't expect them to just be like, oh, I'm gonna abort my baby. Oh, just kidding, I'm gonna give it up for adoption. You know, it's just that.
And you're not gonna, you're gonna what? You're gonna give what?
Give the baby up for adoption.
Oh, you're gonna what? Oh, create a home for adoption. That's right. Okay. See? But see how, I mean, I used to say that. I used to say I was put up for adoption. I did.
I was adopted, so.
Oh, cool.
So I always just say I'm put up for
Right.
adoption.
And I always said it too until I realized the history
Yeah.
and the way it's kind of charged with all this stuff. But it's a habit. And I've had to practice it because that's the first phrase that comes to my mind. So I'm not dogging on you.
And to me, it's not a negative thing though, because I did have such a positive experience. So when I say put up for adoption, in my mind, I'm completely positive. But
Right.
I don't understand how other people would think that's awful.
Right, because we benefited from that choice, right? But for the birth mother, she might have a totally different perspective. What were you saying?
Okay, you know whenever you're like, you're supposed to avoid the word adoption when you first wake up?
You don't have to, but that's just an idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like whenever you're explaining like confidential or semi-open or open, can you say, like is it okay to say like, have you considered open adoption?
Yes, absolutely. Because as soon as she starts thinking about, you're starting to tell me I get to be involved and I get to choose and whoa, you're really like, I'm trying to put up hurdles so that you'll stop talking, and you're like leaping over them, and you're doing it respectfully. Well, did you realize that you could know what happened to your baby? Because that's what I said my fear was. I could never give it up because I'd never know what happened. What about this? I can never choose adoption because my baby will hate me. My baby's still gonna hate me, I'll just not know about it.
You're gonna hate you, your baby will love you for giving them a chance at life.
How do you know?
Because the baby would like to live.
Because growing up, I feel like growing up with parents that adopted, they would provide like a good perspective about it, not like.
But did you read that story in the paper about those people that put their kids in a cage in Florida? Their adopted kids in a cage in Florida? I mean, that was really really seriously. It really happened. Okay, but do you see? Okay, so I read that, I saw it on the news, or I saw it on the blog, and that's what's in my head.
You can
What were you saying?
Okay, wait.
What if you back up what you're saying with stories, like positive outcomes?
Okay, realistic stories, definitely. What else?
You can pick your parents, but if you're afraid of your children's reaction, you can have a semi-closed adoption.
Bingo. Okay, you just listened to my fear and you gave me an alternative that still allows me to consider it, because you've just said I could pick the parents, and once you explain it, that means I'm going to continue to get information, which means that information flows both ways. You can write to your child and give it to Katie, whether it's directly or indirectly through the intermediary. You can express that love. So if you're afraid that your baby is going to hate you, I can understand that. Because you know what? As an adopted kid, I had that thought. I had that thought towards my birth mother. When I was young and did not understand what adoption was, I had a moment of, what kind of mother does that? Who does that? Who gives a baby away? What? I just hate that.
I'm just curious, how did you find out you were adopted? Like, how did your parents tell you?
What is your name?
Audrey.
How long have you known that your name is Audrey?
I don't know, as long as I can remember.
Exactly, because they called you Audrey from the moment they named you, right? So it was a very natural thing. You just kind of always knew that you were Audrey. Same way, I always knew, because they made it that way. They made it a very natural thing. So even while they were changing my diaper or bathing me, they talked about, I'm so glad you're part of our home. I'm so glad we were able to adopt you. I'm so glad you're my daughter. This is wonderful. And just slowly, the word was there. I've never not known. There was never one of these Jerry Springer moments around the Thanksgiving table. Pass the potatoes, Aunt Susie. That's not your Aunt Susie. Dun dun dun. You know, what are you talking about? That's not Aunt Susie. That's not your real family. You know, there was never that moment for me, because my family chose to be very deliberate in making that just a part of the way the fabric of our family was. And that's the beauty of the way adoption looks today, because the birth mother can be involved if she wants to. She doesn't have to, but she can. And in the right circumstances, that can be very beneficial to the child. I'm so glad you brought that up. Very good. Yeah.
If you had a confidential adoption, how did you find your birth mother?
Ooh, great question. How do you think I found her? For me, it was through the adoption agency, because I knew the agency I was adopted from. This is a very personal thing that I'm getting ready to say. This is a personal opinion that I hold. When I talk with men and women about adoption, I encourage them. I give them all the information, but I encourage them to work with adoption professionals. I encourage them to work with agencies, because agencies are able to offer them huge numbers of services that they need. Not only the ability to access the families, but material assistance, clothing, medical care, all these things that are so important. And counseling. The counsel that is necessary in creating this plan. The support that comes with that counsel. A person can choose to work with an agency, or a person can choose to place independently with an attorney. One is not better than the other. I'm glad we have options that you can work with an individual or you can work with an agency. But from the perspective of the birth parent, I want that woman and I want that man to get the necessary support that they need while they are pregnant, when they place, and after they place. Because it's not over for them when they walk away. When they leave that hospital empty-handed, part of it has only just begun. And the agency is there to continue to love on her and help her and support her and assist her in the counsel that will be necessary for her to regain and restructure and redeem her life, his life too. I decided to contact the agency from where I was placed, and I said, hey, I want some non-identifying information. I'm not ready to meet her yet. And so I was at college, and I had always asked my parents, are you sure there's no information? Are you sure there's no information? And they were like, there's no information, I would have told you. Okay. And there was a moment I'll never forget when I was getting ready. I was set to go to UT. I was going to do medicine. I was going to play volleyball. I was going to do da-da-da-da-da. Everything was like ducks in a row. But I always loved to sing, which just, I was always told, that's a great hobby to have, but you'll never earn a dime at it. Go do something that you're going to make a living at, That's a good parent trying to tell you to go, Well, I will never forget. I was going through the kitchen, and I asked my mother one day, Mom, really, there wasn't any information? And she was starting to, okay, here we go again, Julie. And she says, you know what? And it was like a light bulb turned on for her. And she said, I have a vague memory, but I have a memory of the social worker coming in, and as she handed you to me, she said, the birth mother said, if this child ever shows any musical ability, to please foster that. Okay, that was huge for me. That was like, because I thought, wow, are you serious? That was the first time I'd ever heard one shred of personal information about the gene pool that I came from. That was huge, because I'd always loved it, but I didn't know. Well, you know what? I went and did a lot of soul searching, a lot of thinking, a lot of praying, and I ended up going back and telling my parents, okay, well, guess what? I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a singer! And they were like, holy cow, My dad just about fell apart, stroked out. But he looked at me and he said, okay, all right. So I went off to Texas State, started pursuing music, and it was while I was there, 2 years into my schooling, when I decided, that was an amazing piece of information. I think I want to know a little bit more. Called them and said, I want some non-identifying information. I started the process, just went backward. And I filled out the paperwork. They sent me the files, all the papers in my files, and they blotted out all the identifying information. No last names of anybody. But I saw for the first time with my eyes Allison and her whole family history. And there were times where I felt like I was reading about myself. Loves music, loves languages, loves the mountains, loves to be outdoors, loves. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was just like hungry, reading through. I wasn't hatched. I didn't drop from the stork's, blanket. I was born. This is amazing. And then I flipped to the information about my birth father. Musician. He played guitar. He wrote his own music. And I'm like, whoa! So I'm off fantasizing about this wonderfully romantic relationship and on and on and on. And then, I come back down from reality and think, wow, okay, this is enough for me. This is enough for now. And went several more years, got married, And it was when I was on a show. I was living in Minneapolis at the time, doing a show in Minneapolis, when I was just getting ready to go to Minneapolis, and I called them at the agency and I said, okay, I'm ready. I was about 25, 26, and I said, I'm ready to find her. And I had wanted to find him too, because he was the guitar playing guy and wrote the music and everything. I mean, who wouldn't want to know a guy who plays guitar and writes his own music? I mean, that just sounded so exciting to me. And so, and I had a full description of what they looked like physically. And my brother, who was older than me, also was adopted, and we shared our stories back and forth about all our fantasies. And one day I was driving along in San Marcos, and I heard this song come on. By the way, my birth father's name is George. So I'm listening, and I hear, all my exes live in Texas. And I'm like, wow, cool, you know. Then I hear, Allison's in Galveston. You know, I'm like, holy cow, my dad's George Strait. I'm so pumped. He's got blue eyes, he plays the guitar, he writes his own music, he even talks about my birth mom is Allison. Oh my goodness, and of course I didn't know at the time that Allison wasn't from Galveston, but that was a minor detail. He's not my dad. He's not my dad. But it was a great fantasy at the time. It was really awesome. But I went backwards. So I told him I'm ready to find the information and really nail it down. And so they said, okay, you got to fill out this paperwork, and we're going to contact her, and it will be up to her. Because remember, I was placed under a confidential adoption, which meant we need to honor her desire to remain anonymous. And that was the only option available to her all those years ago. So they contacted her, and I flew off and thought, I don't want to fret about it, I don't want to worry about it. I came home from the theater one night, light blinking on my phone, and I thought it was my husband, and I picked it up, and it's like 11:30, and hey, this is so-and-so, and it's the social worker, and we found her. And I'm just